Did you ever eat those meals? The simple, stretched thin dishes that meant you grew up poor? These meals were daily necessities that filled empty plates and shaped childhoods through times of struggle. But what stories do those humble dishes really tell about survival and family? Mock applesauce was a creative solution used by families who could not afford fresh apples or canned fruit during tough times. This substitute was made by cooking peeled potatoes with sugar, cinnamon, and a touch of lemon juice to mimic the texture and flavor of traditional applesauce. It offered a surprisingly close taste while being much cheaper and more accessible in many households. The recipe stretched basic ingredients into something sweet and familiar, helping families enjoy a comforting side without the cost. This clever dish highlights the ingenuity of resourceful cooks who transformed humble pantry staples into beloved treats. Many children grew up eating mock applesauce, often unaware of its unusual base, and it became a nostalgic flavor tied to thrift and survival. The dish's simplicity and frugality made it a staple in many kitchens, symbolizing how necessity breeds invention when resources are scarce. It was not just about eating, but about making the most of what was available during challenging economic times. Creamed spinach on toast was a popular frugal side dish that combined cooked spinach with a simple creamy sauce served over slices of toasted bread. This dish was affordable, using frozen or canned spinach mixed with milk or cream and thickened with flour or cornstarch to create a smooth, rich topping. The toasted bread provided texture and substance, turning a basic vegetable into a filling accompaniment suitable for any meal. Creamed spinach on toast was easy to prepare in large quantities, making it ideal for families seeking inexpensive ways to add nutrition and comfort to their dinners. It was often served alongside inexpensive proteins or eggs, reflecting the mid-century emphasis on hearty yet economical home cooking. This dish embodies the era's resourcefulness in stretching small amounts of vegetables to feed hungry households. Its creamy texture and mild flavor helped make spinach more appealing to children and adults alike. Today, it remains a nostalgic reminder of simple, satisfying meals from the past. Cornbread and milk was a straightforward comfort food often eaten for breakfast or as a snack in families with limited means. Warm cornbread made from simple ingredients like cornmeal, water, and sometimes eggs or milk was sliced or broken into pieces and soaked in cold milk. This practice turned dry bread into a soft, nourishing dish that was both filling and affordable. Cornbread and milk provided an inexpensive source of calories and protein, making it a practical choice for those managing tight food budgets. Its warmth and familiarity brought comfort during difficult times, and it was commonly enjoyed in rural and urban homes alike. The simplicity of the dish allowed it to become a staple in the diets of many children growing up with little. The soothing texture and mild sweetness made it a favorite way to start the day or satisfy hunger between meals. Cornbread and milk symbolized the resilience and modest pleasures found in everyday sustenance. Tomato soup with grilled cheese croutons was a simple yet satisfying meal that offered both warmth and substance for families on a budget. The basic tomato soup was typically made from canned tomatoes, broth, and seasonings, simmered to create a smooth, flavorful base. To add texture and a filling element, small grilled cheese sandwiches were cut into bite-sized croutons and floated atop the soup. This clever pairing stretched limited ingredients into a wholesome dish that children and adults could enjoy alike. The crispy, buttery bread combined with melted cheese complemented the tangy soup, providing contrasting flavors and textures in each bite. Tomato soup with grilled cheese croutons was easy to prepare in large pots, perfect for feeding families during cold months. Its affordability and comforting taste made it a beloved staple in many homes during the 1960s through the 1980s. The dish remains a nostalgic reminder of simple meals that nourished both body and soul. Peanut butter and honey sandwiches were an affordable and protein-rich lunch option that many children grew up eating. Combining creamy or chunky peanut butter with the natural sweetness of honey, this sandwich offered a quick and satisfying meal made from pantry staples. The ingredients were inexpensive and readily available, making this a go-to choice for families managing tight budgets. Peanut butter provided essential protein and fats, while honey added flavor and a touch of energy-boosting sugar. This sandwich was easy to prepare and transport, making it popular for school lunches or quick snacks. Its combination of sweet and savory flavors appealed to children and adults alike, becoming a timeless classic. Peanut butter and honey sandwiches symbolized resourcefulness and simplicity, reflecting how modest ingredients could come together to create comfort and sustenance. For many, this sandwich evokes memories of childhood and family care during financially challenging times. Bean and potato burritos were an economical and filling meal that made use of inexpensive, accessible ingredients. Simple tortillas were filled with a mixture of cooked beans and diced or mashed potatoes, sometimes seasoned with onions, garlic, or chili powder to add flavor. This dish was popular among families looking to stretch limited food supplies while providing enough calories and nutrients to satisfy hunger. Beans offered a valuable source of protein and fiber, while potatoes added bulk and energy, making the burrito a complete meal at a low cost. Easy to prepare and portable, bean and potato burritos were perfect for lunches or quick dinners. They also reflected the cultural blending occurring in many American kitchens during the mid-20th century. This humble dish demonstrated how creativity and thrift combined to feed families through tough economic times. Meatless meatballs were a creative and thrifty alternative to traditional meatballs, made primarily from vegetables, breadcrumbs, and eggs. These meatless versions helped families reduce their reliance on expensive meat by using ingredients like grated carrots, zucchini, or beans, combined with seasonings and binders to create a satisfying texture. Once shaped into balls, they were baked or fried and served with sauces or pasta, mimicking the appearance and taste of meat-based dishes. Meatless meatballs were especially popular during periods of financial constraint or meat shortages, allowing households to enjoy familiar comfort foods on a budget. They also reflected growing interest in vegetarian options within economically limited kitchens. These dishes demonstrated how resourcefulness and adaptation helped preserve family traditions while managing limited resources. Many who grew up with meatless meatballs recall them fondly as inventive and filling meals that showed how to make every ingredient count. Oatmeal with brown sugar was a hearty and affordable breakfast choice that kept families nourished and ready for the day. Simple rolled or quick oats were cooked in water or milk, then sweetened with brown sugar or molasses for extra flavor and calories. This warming dish provided fiber, energy, and comfort, making it a staple in homes facing financial hardship. Oatmeal was easy to prepare in large quantities and could be varied with additions like raisins or cinnamon when available. Its affordability and nutritional value made it a go-to breakfast across diverse American households during the 1960s to 1980s. For many, oatmeal with brown sugar is a nostalgic taste of early mornings when families gathered before work and school. The simplicity and warmth of this meal embody the practical and loving care present in homes stretching every resource. Vegetable fried rice was a quick and inexpensive meal that made use of leftover rice and seasonal or frozen vegetables. By stir-frying cold-cooked rice with onions, carrots, peas, and soy sauce, cooks could transform leftovers into a flavorful and filling dish. This meal was practical for families aiming to reduce waste and stretch limited food supplies. Vegetable fried rice was easy to prepare and customizable based on whatever ingredients were on hand, reflecting the adaptability needed in resource-conscious households. It also reflected influences from Asian cuisine that became increasingly familiar to Americans in the mid-20th century. This dish provided a balanced combination of carbohydrates and vegetables, making it a nutritious and satisfying option on a tight budget. Many remember vegetable fried rice as a tasty, no-fuss way to turn simple staples into a wholesome family meal. Cabbage and potato slaw was a cold side dish combining shredded cabbage and diced potatoes tossed in a light, tangy dressing. This inexpensive salad was popular for its fresh texture and ability to accompany heavier dishes, offering balance on the plate. The combination made use of affordable, readily available vegetables that could be prepared in large quantities to feed families and social gatherings. Cabbage and potato slaw was often flavored with vinegar, sugar, and mustard, giving it a bright, slightly sweet flavor. Served chilled, it was perfect for summer meals or potluck tables, adding crunch and variety. This dish showcased how humble ingredients could be elevated with simple preparation to create satisfying flavors and textures. For many who grew up with limited means, cabbage and potato slaw was a familiar and comforting part of everyday meals that brought freshness and nourishment to the table. Macaroni and cheese casserole with breadcrumbs was a beloved baked dish that brought comfort and texture to many tables during hard economic times. This casserole combined tender macaroni noodles with a creamy cheese sauce made from affordable cheddar or processed cheese, creating a rich and satisfying base. The topping of toasted breadcrumbs added a crunchy contrast, elevating the simple ingredients into a dish that felt special despite its humble components. Easy to prepare in large batches, it was a practical way for families to stretch limited meat portions by relying on pasta and cheese for sustenance. Macaroni and cheese casserole also offered versatility, allowing cooks to add whatever extras they had on hand, such as diced vegetables or leftover meats. The warm, cheesy flavor was familiar and comforting, making it a favorite among children and adults alike. This casserole symbolized the creativity and resilience of families who found joy in simple, affordable meals during the 1960s to 1980s. It remains a nostalgic reminder of home-cooked dinners where every bite was savored and shared. Ham and potato hash was a quick and hearty dinner option that combined diced ham, potatoes, and onions, pan-fried until golden and flavorful. This dish was especially popular because it made efficient use of leftover ham, stretching small amounts of meat across a filling and satisfying meal. Potatoes provided bulk and energy, while onions added sweetness and aroma to the skillet mix. Ham and potato hash was inexpensive and easy to prepare, making it a favorite among families managing tight food budgets. The crisp edges of the fried potatoes contrasted nicely with tender ham pieces, creating a pleasing texture. This skillet meal could be served for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, reflecting the era's practical approach to food. It was often paired with eggs or simple sides, rounding out the meal. Ham and potato hash exemplified resourcefulness and comfort, bringing warmth and fullness to the table. For many, it evokes memories of busy kitchens where nothing went to waste and every meal mattered. Vegetable soup with dumplings was a simple, nourishing dish that combined a light broth filled with seasonal vegetables and tender, homemade dumplings. This soup was a budget-friendly way to provide warmth and sustenance during colder months, relying on affordable garden vegetables like carrots, celery, and potatoes. The dumplings, made from basic flour, water, and eggs, added a soft, comforting texture that made the soup more filling. Vegetable soup with dumplings was easy to prepare in large pots, ideal for feeding families or community groups during times of economic hardship. The dish reflected home cooking traditions that emphasized stretching ingredients and turning simple pantry staples into hearty meals. The combination of fresh vegetables and doughy dumplings brought both nutrition and comfort to the table. Many families cherished this soup for its versatility and wholesome flavors, often customizing dumplings with herbs or seasoning. It remains a nostalgic symbol of creative, caring cooking during the 1960s through the 1980s. Potato salad with mustard dressing was a classic take on a familiar dish, substituting the usual creamy mayonnaise with a tangy, flavorful mustard vinaigrette. This variation combined boiled potatoes with diced onions, celery, and a dressing made from mustard, vinegar, oil, and seasonings to create a refreshing yet hearty side dish. Potato salad with mustard dressing was especially popular among those looking for a lighter alternative or wanting to stretch ingredients further. The mustard added sharpness and complexity, balancing the earthiness of the potatoes and crispness of the vegetables. This salad was easy to prepare ahead of time and served cold, making it perfect for picnics, potlucks, or everyday meals. Affordable and filling, it was a staple in many homes during the 1960s to 1980s, offering a different flavor profile while maintaining the comfort of potato salad. The dish represents the simple ingenuity of families creating variety and nutrition within limited means. Eggplant and tomato bake was a colorful and satisfying layered casserole that combined sliced eggplant and tomatoes with breadcrumbs and cheese, baked until tender and golden. This dish was popular for its affordability and ability to transform basic vegetables into a flavorful, comforting meal. The eggplant provided a meaty texture while the tomatoes added acidity and moisture, balancing the richness of the melted cheese topping. Breadcrumbs sprinkled on top created a crispy crust that contrasted with the soft interior. Eggplant and tomato bake was an economical choice for families seeking nutritious meals without expensive ingredients. It could be served as a main or side dish and was often enjoyed with bread or rice. This casserole exemplified mid-century home cooking's emphasis on making the most of seasonal produce and simple pantry staples. Its blend of textures and tastes left a lasting impression on those who grew up with it as a familiar, satisfying meal. Vegetable stir-fry over noodles was a quick, affordable, and adaptable dish that used seasonal vegetables sautéed with simple seasonings and served atop cooked noodles. This meal was favored for its low cost and versatility, allowing families to use whatever vegetables were available, such as cabbage, carrots, and onions. The noodles added bulk and energy, turning the vegetables into a complete, filling meal. Vegetable stir-fry over noodles reflected the growing influence of Asian-inspired cooking in American kitchens during the 1960s to 1980s. It was practical for stretching ingredients and reducing waste while providing color, flavor, and nutrition. This dish could be prepared rapidly, making it ideal for busy households. Its combination of textures and tastes made it enjoyable and accessible to all ages. Many remember vegetable stir-fry over noodles as a creative and healthy solution during financially tight times. Canned salmon salad was a nutritious and economical dish made by mixing canned salmon with mayonnaise, chopped onions, and seasonings, served on bread or crackers. This salad was a convenient way to enjoy seafood without the expense or perishability of fresh fish. Canned salmon offered valuable protein and omega-3 fats, making it a favorite ingredient among families managing tight food budgets. The salad was simple to prepare and could be refrigerated for several days, ideal for school lunches or light dinners. Its creamy texture and mild flavor appealed to a wide audience, providing a tasty alternative to more traditional sandwich fillings. Canned salmon salad showcased the ingenuity of mid-century home cooks who relied on pantry staples to create healthy, satisfying meals. For many, it evokes memories of humble yet nourishing dishes shared at family tables. Hot dog and macaroni skillet was a quick and budget-friendly meal, combining sliced or ground hot dogs with macaroni and cheese, all cooked together in one pan. This dish stretched inexpensive processed meats and pasta into a hearty and appealing meal for children and adults alike. The creamy cheese sauce complemented the savory hot dogs, making it a popular choice for busy families needing to feed multiple mouths with limited resources. Hot dog and macaroni skillet was simple to prepare, requiring only a few basic ingredients and minimal cooking skills. Its all-in-one nature reduced cleanup and maximized flavor and convenience. This dish reflected the era's emphasis on practicality and comfort in home cooking. Many remember it as a childhood favorite, embodying the creativity that helped families make the most of modest food supplies. Cream cheese and jelly sandwich was a sweet, creamy, and affordable treat that stretched limited pantry staples into a satisfying snack or lunch. This sandwich combined soft cream cheese with fruit-flavored jelly spread between slices of white or sandwich bread. The contrast between tangy cream cheese and sweet jelly created a flavor balance that was both simple and delicious. Cream cheese and jelly sandwiches were easy to prepare, required no cooking, and could be made quickly for school lunches or snacks. This pairing was popular among families looking to add variety to standard peanut butter and jelly sandwiches or to use leftover ingredients. Its creamy texture and sweet taste made it a favorite for children and adults on a budget. This sandwich represents the ingenuity and resourcefulness in mid-20th century kitchens, turning humble ingredients into memorable meals. Cabbage soup was a simple, hearty vegetable soup centered on affordable cabbage, often combined with potatoes, carrots, and onions to create a filling, nutritious meal. This soup was a staple in many households managing limited food budgets, especially during colder months when warmth and sustenance were crucial. The ingredients were inexpensive and easy to grow or store, making cabbage soup a go-to recipe for stretching resources. Cooked slowly, it developed rich flavors despite its simplicity, providing comfort and nourishment. Cabbage soup was frequently served with bread or crackers, making it a complete and satisfying meal. This dish reflects the practical, no-frills approach to cooking common in the 1960s to 1980s, emphasizing utility over extravagance. Many recall cabbage soup as a nurturing dish that sustained families during difficult times. It remains a symbol of resilience and home cooking from a bygone era. Homemade potato chips were a popular and economical snack made by thinly slicing potatoes and frying them in oil at home. This simple preparation allowed families to create a crispy treat without the need to buy expensive store-bought snacks. Potatoes were affordable and widely available, making them perfect for this kind of resourceful cooking. The chips were often lightly salted and could be flavored with herbs or spices if available. Homemade potato chips were especially popular among children and teenagers, offering a crunchy, satisfying snack that felt indulgent despite being budget-friendly. Making chips at home also allowed control over ingredients and portion sizes, a practical advantage for families mindful of cost and nutrition. These chips were often served during family gatherings, movie nights, or as after-school treats. Their golden, crispy texture and simple flavor made them a beloved comfort food. Many who grew up in the 1960s to 1980s remember homemade potato chips fondly as a symbol of affordable indulgence and creative cooking during times of limited resources. Peanut butter on celery sticks was a crunchy, nutritious snack that provided a satisfying balance of textures and flavors. Celery stalks, fresh and crisp, were filled or topped with creamy or chunky peanut butter, combining the natural bitterness of the vegetable with the rich, nutty taste of the spread. This snack was affordable, relying on inexpensive ingredients commonly found in most kitchens. It was a quick and easy option for children and adults alike, often served as a lunchbox addition or a healthy between-meal bite. Peanut butter on celery sticks also offered a good mix of protein, fiber, and crunch, making it both filling and refreshing. The simplicity and nutritional value made it popular among families trying to stretch their food budgets without sacrificing health. This snack embodied the practical, wholesome choices common in American households from the 1960s to the 1980s. It remains a nostalgic favorite, evoking memories of simple pleasures during modest times. Fried egg sandwich was a quick, affordable meal made by frying eggs and placing them between slices of bread, creating a simple yet satisfying sandwich. This dish was popular for breakfast or anytime hunger struck, offering protein and energy at minimal cost. The eggs could be seasoned lightly and cooked to preference, whether sunny side up, over easy, or scrambled. Bread, often white or whole wheat, served as a filling base that complemented the soft, warm eggs. The sandwich was easy to prepare, requiring only basic ingredients and little time, which made it ideal for busy families or those with limited resources. It was commonly served with ketchup or butter and sometimes accompanied by a slice of cheese for added flavor. Fried egg sandwiches were a staple in many American households from the 1960s to the 1980s, remembered for their comforting simplicity. The dish reflects the era's focus on practical, nourishing meals that made the most of everyday pantry staples. Potato and onion gratin was a creamy baked dish featuring thinly sliced potatoes layered with onions and cooked in a rich sauce, often made from milk or cream and butter. This economical dish was both filling and flavorful, making it a favorite for families seeking to maximize limited ingredients. The gratin was seasoned with salt, pepper, and sometimes herbs to enhance its savory profile. Baking the potatoes and onions together allowed the flavors to meld while the top developed a golden crust, adding texture to the creamy interior. Potato and onion gratin was ideal for feeding large families and could be served as a side or main course. It made use of affordable staple ingredients, reflecting the thrifty cooking habits of the 1960s to 1980s. Many remember this dish as a comforting reminder of home-cooked meals where simple ingredients were transformed into something special. Its rich, creamy texture and savory taste made it a beloved part of budget-conscious cooking. Rice and egg breakfast bowl was a practical, filling meal combining cooked rice topped with a fried or scrambled egg, offering a balanced start to the day. This dish utilized leftover rice or freshly cooked grains, making it economical and quick to prepare. The egg provided protein and richness, while the rice contributed carbohydrates and bulk to sustain energy. Often seasoned with salt, pepper, or soy sauce, it reflected simple, versatile flavors adaptable to different tastes and available ingredients. The breakfast bowl was favored by families looking for hearty yet affordable morning meals that required minimal preparation. It could be enhanced with additions like chopped vegetables or herbs when available, adding nutrition and variety. Rice and egg breakfast bowl was common in many American households from the 1960s through the 1980s and remains a nostalgic symbol of frugal, satisfying breakfasts. Its simplicity and comfort made it a reliable choice for starting the day with nourishment. Sweet potato fries were baked or fried slices of sweet potatoes that served as a tasty and economical side dish. Sweet potatoes were affordable and nutritious, rich in vitamins and fiber, making these fries a healthy alternative to traditional potato fries. The preparation involved cutting sweet potatoes into thin strips and cooking them until crisp and golden, often seasoned with salt or cinnamon sugar for a sweet, savory flavor. Sweet potato fries were popular as a snack or accompaniment to main dishes, providing color and sweetness to the plate. This dish fit well into budget-conscious households during the 1960s to 1980s, where simple ingredients were transformed into flavorful meals. Their natural sweetness and appealing texture made them a favorite among children and adults alike. Sweet potato fries represent the creative and resourceful cooking of families who made the most of affordable ingredients to create enjoyable food experiences despite limited means. Stuffed zucchini boats were hollowed-out zucchini halves filled with a mixture typically made from cooked rice, tomato sauce, and seasonings, then baked until tender. This dish was an economical way to create a filling and flavorful meal using fresh vegetables and pantry staples. The zucchini provided a low-cost vessel that added moisture and mild flavor, complementing the savory filling. Stuffed zucchini boats were easy to prepare in bulk and suitable for feeding families on a budget. The dish showcased the creative use of garden produce combined with simple, inexpensive ingredients to make hearty meals. It was commonly served as a main or side dish and reflected the practical, wholesome cooking common in American homes from the 1960s to 1980s. Many remember stuffed zucchini boats as a comforting, nutritious way to stretch ingredients while enjoying fresh flavors. This recipe is a testament to resourcefulness and care in food preparation during modest times. Vegetable and cheese omelette was an egg-based dish combining affordable vegetables and cheese, offering a nutritious and filling meal. Eggs provided a rich source of protein, while seasonal vegetables such as onions, peppers, or spinach added flavor, texture, and vitamins. Cheese was often included to enhance taste and provide additional calories. This omelette was quick to prepare and required only a few simple ingredients, making it ideal for families managing limited food budgets. It could be served for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, reflecting the flexibility needed in thrifty cooking. The combination of eggs, vegetables, and cheese created a satisfying dish that appealed to adults and children alike. Vegetable and cheese omelette represents the mid-century focus on maximizing nutrition and flavor without extravagance. Many grew up enjoying this simple but hearty meal, remembering it as a staple of home cooking during the 1960s to 1980s. Canned corn and potato chowder was a creamy, hearty soup made from canned corn, potatoes, broth, and often milk or cream to create a comforting dish. This chowder was inexpensive and easy to prepare, relying on pantry staples that could be stretched to feed large families. Potatoes added substance and energy, while canned corn contributed sweetness and texture. The creamy base made the soup rich and satisfying, ideal for warming up during colder months. This dish was practical and filling, reflecting the economic realities of many American households from the 1960s through the 1980s. It was often served with bread or crackers to make a complete meal. Canned corn and potato chowder embodied the resourceful cooking of families making the most of accessible ingredients to provide nourishing and delicious food. It remains a nostalgic reminder of simple, hearty meals from past decades. Cucumber and sour cream salad was a refreshing side dish made from thinly sliced cucumbers tossed in sour cream and seasoned with dill or other herbs. This salad was affordable and easy to prepare, making it a common accompaniment at family meals or social gatherings. The cool, crisp cucumbers combined with the tangy creaminess of sour cream created a light, palate-cleansing contrast to heavier dishes. Its simple ingredients made it accessible to families on tight budgets while adding color and freshness to the table. This salad reflected mid-century preferences for creamy dressings and fresh vegetables. It was often served chilled and could be prepared ahead of time, which added convenience for busy cooks. Many remember cucumber and sour cream salad as a bright and tasty addition that balanced traditional meals, embodying the practical and flavorful approach to cooking in the 1960s to 1980s. Sugarbre was an inexpensive meal that a lot of poor Americans, especially children, ate when there was nothing else they had. It was something that was literally just as bare bones as you could imagine. Plain bread, sprinkled with only a modest amount of sugar, spread with butter and dipped in a little bit of milk. It was a way to stretch ingredients, but people tried their best to make it feel like it was a sweet treat regardless. Of course, it was hard to take it that way, but it really shows you how resilient people were and how ingenious their plans were when it came to rationing things out. Bread was really cheap and filling, and it was especially one of the best things people who were farmsteaders relied on. Plus, sugar was also just as important for people who lived in the city. It was a quick burst of energy that really set people right, and while it was not cheap, a small amount could do a lot for a plain slice of bread. Also, that crunch was just addictive. You didn't need to cook it, and it was a decent pick-me-up for what it was worth. Johnny cake is not the sweet boxed pancake you grew up with. Real Johnny cake was a rough, stone-ground cornmeal flatbread, sometimes thick as a thumb, other times no more than a crisp edge. And the flavor? That came from drippings. Pork grease, bacon fat, or whatever hot animal oil you had from the last meal. It sizzled in a cast iron pan, or a rock if that was all you had, and filled the air with a smell that meant survival. Every hiss of grease was a whisper of comfort in a kitchen where the shelves were almost bare. It was greasy, crumbly, and not always consistent, but that never mattered. When it hit your tongue, it brought a hit of salt, fat, and heat. And when the grease soaked through the bread's edges, it felt almost like luxury. Johnny cakes were for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, anytime the fire was hot and the stomach was louder than the clock. That was the flavor of poverty dressed up as ingenuity. Today, nobody wants to fry in leftover pork fat. We use olive oil, avocado oil, and stovetops with timers. But back then, the real taste of home was whatever was left behind in the pan. Why did we replace memory with convenience and call it progress? Mock fried chicken steak is a really interesting one because this actually makes use of so many things in creative ways to mimic the texture, taste, and overall feeling of fried chicken steak. Traditionally, the recipe calls for cheap cuts of meat, but in the Great Depression, people were even running with non-meat ingredients thanks to World War II rationing, which really put a massive hole in America's overall meat supply. In the 50s, too, home cooks brought this recipe back when they really needed to stretch a small amount of protein or use government food. So if you make this dish with ground meat or beef pork and shape it into a patty, mix it with breadcrumbs and cracker crumbs, and then douse it in seasoned flour or cracker crumbs again, then pan fry it, you get a pretty decent imitation of chicken fried steak. You just have to be really careful with what kind of seasonings you use because it's also true that the kind of seasoning you go with decides how good of an imitation of a chicken fried steak this is. The most interesting part is probably the flour-based version, which was straight out of the Depression. People would make a fritter using flour, milk, and eggs to make something that resembled a steak, and this was seasoned and fried. There was no meat, but it was meant to imitate the breading, flour-y taste of the meal anyway. In all cases, it was a comfort meat, and a chunk of that comfort was that it kept your wallet in good health. If you've never tried a raw onion sandwich, it's one of those meals that'll stick with you, for better or worse. Sliced raw onions, slathered with a bit of mustard or mayo, tucked between two slices of bread. It wasn't gourmet, but it was a working man's lunch that packed a punch. Onions were cheap, easy to store, and filled you up. The mustard or mayo added some tang and creaminess, but the star of the show was the onion. Not only was it a strong-flavored, inexpensive option, but it was also a great way to keep your hunger at bay until your next meal. Though its pungent scent often lingered long after the meal was finished, it didn't matter when food was scarce. For many families, raw onion sandwiches were a quick fix that provided the sustenance they needed to get through the day. But if you think this is as bold as it gets, just wait until you hear about the next sandwich. Amid scarcity, Depression-era households leaned heavily on resourcefulness, turning even the simplest pantry staples into nutritious meals, leading directly to the rise in popularity of peanut butter bread. With just flour, peanut butter, sugar, and baking powder, home bakers concocted this hearty loaf, demonstrating remarkable creativity born from necessity. The affordability and accessibility of peanut butter played a significant role. By the 1930s, this creamy spread had transitioned from a health food for the wealthy into a cheap protein source for everyone. Interestingly, peanut butter bread required no yeast, a clever adaptation considering yeast was costly and sometimes unavailable, further reducing waste and maximizing resources. Food historians note that newspapers eagerly published this simple recipe, promoting it as the ultimate economical dish, sometimes even humorously suggesting peanut butter could single-handedly keep America strong. Many Depression survivors fondly remember slicing this loaf thinly, stretching its lifespan for days, or toasting stale slices for snacks, exemplifying an era when food waste was practically criminal. Spam and crackers are a classic that you are all very aware of, but what you might not know is that after the Depression and war ended, these were the lifelines of people across the entire country. I know we've all heard so many stories of how Spam was nearly invaluable during the Depression, but it's also been something that's worth all of its weight in gold in later eras too. For a lot of people, Spam and crackers were the most ideal and reliable breakfast, something that became steeped and ingrained in their daily routine to the point that they just did not know what to do without it. Do you have anything like that? Maybe a bowl of oatmeal you need to get your day started. A favorite cereal that you just can't get out of bed without. Maybe you really need your usual peanut butter and jam sandwich. Whatever makes you tick, everyone was sustained by Spam and crackers. You could make casseroles out of sandwiches, use it in stews, and even make gravies out of it. You could dip crackers into a makeshift dip at home and also enjoy them that way. Spread some lard on them with the Spam, or make a very nice sandwich with the crackers, Spam and celery or iceberg. It would be low effort and really quick, so it was the perfect thing to make for when you were in a rush. Dandelion and bacon grease salad is an example of how Depression-era and 20th century foraging can actually lead to some really innovative recipes. This is something that's rooted in rural Midwestern culture, and this salad makes use of whatever is available in the wilds that day. One of the most common things you would ever find in these wilds was dandelion greens. They grew wild in all kinds of environments, roadsides, fields, and yards, and they were a really prized thing for the people. Most folks believed it was a natural remedy for a lot of things because it was believed to help with things like indigestion, inflammation, and strengthening your immune system. In subsistence farming areas and coal country, it was very common for families to teach their kids how to forage dandelion greens. Remember how I told you about the way bacon grease is used in a lot of these dishes? Yeah, so after frying the bacon, a small amount of bacon grease would be preserved and it would be used to flavor any kind of bland or plain dish like beans and cornbread and give it a bit of a savory edge. The rendered fat was really helpful to people because it also meant they didn't exactly need that much oil. Leather britches beans were not made for taste. They were made for keeping your family fed deep into winter when nothing green had grown for months. Pole beans, tough, fibrous, and plain, were strung like ornaments on thread and hung in attics, where heat and air slowly turned them into wrinkled, leathery strands. They looked like something forgotten, but they were never truly forgotten. When the time came, you would boil them back to life. And even after hours of simmering, they kept their chew. It was like eating old rope soaked in broth. But that was the point: durability over flavor. Leather britches were a reminder that food was not always meant to be enjoyed, it was meant to endure. Kids would ask why they were called that, and parents would smile and say, "Because they chew like daddy's boots." And they were not joking. These beans held no glamour, but they held people together when the world was falling apart. Elvis Presley wasn't the only one who loved a peanut butter and bacon sandwich. The combo of crispy, salty bacon and creamy, rich peanut butter created a high-protein, energy-packed sandwich that was a favorite for anyone in need of a quick and filling meal. It's easy to see why this sandwich caught on. It balanced savory and sweet, crunchy and creamy. The bacon gave it that satisfying crunch, while the peanut butter added a smooth richness. It wasn't the healthiest option, but when you're working with a tight budget and even tighter food supplies, it was a treat that gave you the energy to keep going. Not only was this a cheap meal, but it was also indulgent in a way that made you forget about how hard times really were. The combination of these two ingredients might have seemed strange, but it worked, and it worked well. But if you're craving something a little lighter, something that came before the age of bacon and peanut butter, the next sandwich on our list might be just what you need. Amid the widespread struggles of the Great Depression, families turned kitchen staples into culinary innovation, and a standout was a surprisingly sweet yet humble dish known simply as butter and sugar noodles. Pasta, butter, sugar, three affordable ingredients commonly stashed in Depression-era pantries, came together to transform mundane noodles into something unexpectedly comforting and satisfying. This creative approach, driven entirely by necessity, exemplifies how families cleverly adapted to limitations without compromising taste. An interesting twist was that leftover pasta from dinner often made a comeback the next day as a sweetened breakfast, effectively reducing waste and maximizing resources. Affordability and accessibility were vital, and this sweet noodle dish quickly became a favorite because of its simplicity and budget-friendly nature. Sure, nowadays the concept might make a gourmet chef cringe, but back then, those sugary noodles felt like dessert disguised as dinner, an acceptable indulgence when treats were scarce. Parents occasionally sprinkled cinnamon or nutmeg on top, convincing skeptical children that they were eating something far more exciting than just buttered pasta with sugar. Onion sandwiches are not really hard to understand. They're simple, inexpensive meals that were common among many poor Americans. Plus, there's no secret here. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's just raw onion sliced into thin shapes placed between two slices of bread. At most, people would add in whatever butter, salt, or pepper they could spare, and it was something that was favored by people who really wanted an easy-to-prepare meal. Onions also had the benefit of being some of the cheapest vegetables available in the entire market. They also were great for storage, which means that they were able to be bought in bulk without you worrying about them going bad. Bread was also something that people always had in stock, and many families would be relying on meals like this to get by. If they could not afford to buy their own bread, a lot of people would make their own bread or purchase day-old loaves at a discounted price. Onions weren't ever something expensive, but people could also grow them, and many who lived on the outskirts of urban cities and communities did this. They were also a common crop even within these communities because people had their own home gardens. Despite the simplicity, though, the onion sandwich was a knockout. It could really fill you up. The meals we've had so far are really cheap, make-do food, but they still are a proper meal. It started with what you were supposed to throw away. The peelings, the ends, the scraps from last night's potato pot. You rinsed them, maybe scrubbed them, maybe not. Then you boiled them, long and slow, with a few onions or wild herbs and a little salt if you had any. That was your soup. No meat, no broth. Just the memory of a potato and the will to survive. Some mothers swore by it, others swore at it. But either way, it fed the family. It tasted earthy, sometimes bitter, sometimes like nothing at all. But it was hot, and that counted for something. The steam fogged up frostbitten windows. The pot never really emptied. You just kept adding to it. Carrot tops, turnip greens, a crust of stale bread. It became something more than soup. It was a living, simmering promise that you would find a way to get through the winter. Today, we peel our potatoes and throw the skins in the trash. We order pre-made stock and toss leftovers out without thinking. Boiled onion dinners are essentially exactly what they sound like. The idea here was to take an entire onion, use some salt and pepper, and, well, just get to it. This isn't really something that I think could apply at all today to our world or lifestyle anymore, But if you feel differently, or better yet, have different experiences surrounding this, please mention them in the comments. I'm so curious about what this even feels like afterward. This is very telling of the kind of lifestyles people were having before the Depression ended. It was something that was really common in early American frontier households, especially the ones from the 18th and 19th centuries. Onions back then used to be equivalent to treasure because of how well they were stored, and they also were seen as a wonderful flavoring ingredient. Then, in Appalachia and different parts of the South, onions were such a common crop that they became a regular at dinners. It became standard practice to boil whole onions and have them together with some cornbread, of course. Any meat would help, but it was rarely given. Interestingly enough, from what I've read, the onion is supposed to get sweeter. But that's also a little strange because you just don't associate onions with that kind of flavor, right? The fried Bologna and mustard sandwich is one of those classic comfort foods that speaks to simplicity and practicality. A true Southern favorite, this sandwich became a staple in many households during tough times when meat was scarce and budgets were tight. Bologna, a processed meat that was inexpensive and easy to find, was fried until it curled up, creating crispy, golden edges that added texture and flavor to the sandwich. The Bologna's richness was perfectly complemented by a generous smear of mustard, which added a tangy zing that cut through the greasy richness of the fried meat. It wasn't a sophisticated meal, but it was satisfying, hearty, and filled you up without costing much. The best part was how easy it was to prepare. A quick fry on the stove and a spread of mustard, and you had yourself a meal in no time. The Bologna was affordable and could be bought in bulk, making it a practical choice for families trying to stretch their food dollar. While it may not have been gourmet, the fried Bologna and mustard sandwich provided a familiar, comforting taste that many still remember fondly today. It wasn't about fancy ingredients or elaborate cooking methods. It was about making something hearty and satisfying with what was available. And while this classic combo hits the spot, the next sandwich on our list takes another humble ingredient and turns it into something surprisingly delicious. Long before pancakes became a diner staple, Depression-era families turned to Johnny Cakes, a humble cornmeal-based flatbread, as a trusted source of inexpensive nourishment. Originally introduced by early American settlers, Johnny Cakes saw a resurgence during the Depression, becoming popular again due to their affordability and accessibility. Made from little more than cornmeal, salt, and water or milk, this simple batter transformed into golden, crispy patties that creatively replaced costly ingredients like wheat flour or eggs. Resourceful home cooks often pan-fried Johnny Cakes in leftover bacon grease or saved drippings from other meals, cleverly reducing waste and maximizing resources. Families got creative, too. Some would sweeten these cakes slightly with molasses or honey, while others spiced them up with savory leftovers, stretching a modest meal into something memorable. Food historians share an amusing anecdote. Because cornmeal was abundant and dirt cheap, some folks humorously called Johnny Cakes the poor man's pancake, a nickname many wore proudly, turning frugality into a source of culinary pride. Cabbage and noodles were one of the most affordable vegetable-based dishes you could get for yourself. The best thing about cabbages were the way they were available year-round, and let me just put things into perspective for you. Back then, the seasonal nature of things was something that was instrumental to how people planned out their budgets, their groceries, and what they were going to be eating that week. You may also think that without refrigeration, noodles wouldn't really be sustainable, but people would simply make the noodles from scratch when they needed it. Hard work, I know, but at least you didn't need a lot of the stuff. A simple head of cabbage, one bag of noodles that was enough to feed a family of up to 4 and 5, and it was an incredibly popular thing in cities, though there may have been some cultural gaps in preferences. In the South, it never really caught on the same way. It's definitely quite a refreshing dish, though. Vinegar pie was not invented in a bakery. It came from an empty kitchen, a sour idea that sweetened out of necessity. Lemons were rare, fruits were seasonal, but sugar was sometimes still around, and so was vinegar. The result was something strange and brilliant. The filling was made from sugar, eggs, butter if you had it, and a sharp dash of vinegar to imitate that lemony tang. Poured into a crust and baked until it jiggled like custard, It became a kind of fake lemon pie that somehow felt real. It was tart, it was sweet, and it was an act of culinary defiance. You could be broke, isolated, and grieving, but you could still pull a pie out of the oven and pretend everything was fine. People brought it to funerals, to potlucks, to church halls. It became the desperation dessert that no one talked about, but everyone knew. It was the taste of making do, the flavor of getting by. And even though it came from lack, it left you feeling just a little more whole. We've talked a lot about butcher shops and what kind of cuts of meat they would usually throw away. So one of those was the liver, and one of the best ways to use it was to make a liver loaf out of it. People would genuinely do this. It would help a lot, because livers were believed to not only be very dense in their protein content, but also really good for building blood and increasing your overall bone health. Livers were something that a lot of people back then were accustomed to eating as well, even though the metallic and iron-rich taste doesn't perform too well in today's climate. I mean, we have liver fans, but I'm just not sure how many of them would sustainably eat it every week. Either way, liver loaf was something that was more loaf and less liver, because even if the meat was one of the cheapest livers you could find, it still did need to be stretched out badly. It was good to have this with bread to make it more palatable, though. Sometimes a quick and simple solution was needed when the month's budget was running low. Enter the cold hot dog slices and ketchup sandwich. This sandwich was made with leftover hot dogs, sliced cold, and slathered with ketchup between slices of bread. It wasn't fancy, but it was cheap, easy to make, and comforting. After payday, people might have splurged on hot dogs, but by the end of the week, those leftovers would be repurposed into this quick fix. The cold hot dog slices were nothing more than a vehicle for the ketchup, but when combined with bread, it made a satisfying snack or lunch. There wasn't much finesse to it, but it worked. It might not win any culinary awards, but when you've got limited resources, you make do with what you have. And while this sandwich may seem like an odd pairing, it's definitely one you'd want to try if you're in need of a last-minute meal. However, if you're craving something a little heartier, the next sandwich might just be what you're looking for. Faced with pantry shelves lined mostly by oats and root vegetables, cooks during the Great Depression found surprisingly innovative ways to keep meals affordable and accessible without sacrificing taste. Among these humble innovations was savory oatmeal with onions, a dish that swapped the sweet comfort typically associated with oats for a robust, flavorful alternative. Since oatmeal was inexpensive, readily available, and shelf-stable, adding onions was a practical choice driven by creativity born from necessity. Housewives sautéed sliced onions, sometimes incorporating bits of leftover meat drippings or bacon fat saved carefully from previous meals, proving once again that reducing waste and maximizing resources was central to Depression-era cooking. Interestingly, historical cookbooks from the 1930s describe oatmeal as versatile enough for any meal, not just breakfast, highlighting how people cleverly adapted common ingredients into uncommon dishes. A popular Depression-era saying humorously advised hesitant eaters, "If onions can't fix your oatmeal, nothing can." And yet, despite its unusual combination, the dish worked surprisingly well. Caramelized onions provided a savory depth that transformed oats from plain porridge into an unexpectedly hearty, satisfying dinner. One of the most popular things that people would ever eat back in the day was bread with meat drippings. Despite what you might think, this is really just stale bread with leftover drippings that were squeezed out. People weren't fond of letting the drippings go to waste back then. They could be used as a cooking fat, as a dip, or as a coating to increase flavor. Poor people would generally try their best to keep a steady supply of them. This was also one of the most popular meals to come out of the Great Depression because of how economical it was. It also luckily worked better with bran and rye bread instead of the fluffy, white wheat flour one we're used to. That meant that the dish was able to hit a bigger audience because a lot of people were barred from ever being able to buy fluffy white flour-based bread. These were okay, really. Just an average breakfast to get you started, but they were wonderful at stretching out the pantry and making sure things stay for as long as possible. Also, if there's ever something you need toast for, but you're just out of butter, syrup, or whatever, this is a pretty okay alternative. This was food with no illusions. Gruul was not supposed to taste good. It was meant to exist. A thin mixture of water and maybe a little grain if the house had any. In most cases, you thickened it with stale bread, hard as stone, or worse, toast burned until black and crumbled into the pot. That was your flavor. That was your texture. Water and ashes. It was the default meal in poorhouses, orphanages, and backwoods infirmaries, handed out in tin cups to people too sick or too broke to ask for more. It steamed just enough to smell like food, even though it barely qualified. You ate it in silence, fast or slow, depending on how bad the hunger was. Every sip was a reminder of what was missing: milk, butter, anything. It filled the stomach, not the soul. Sometimes it was served with pity, sometimes with a prayer. But it always came with the weight of knowing this was all there was. Today, people hear the word gruel and laugh. It is a joke, a metaphor for blandness. Corn dodgers weren't always the Super Bowl phenomena you know them to be today. Back in the day, they were actually one of the few ways where families could eat and still be full. Corn dodgers basically involve corn cakes that are either fried or baked and then served as a main dish. But when people had any kind of meat or potatoes, just anything at all that was bulkier and heavier to serve it with, they would almost always serve it as a side dish. Still, corn dodgers were essential to getting by the day back then, and they're just as important now. Making these at home is as easy as it gets as well, because once you have the mixture for a corn cake ready, which is a really simple process involving like 3 steps max, all you need to do is shape them into form and get to frying. These make for such a cheap and affordable midday snack, and they're the perfect thing to come back to from work. Best part? You can prepare meals and make enough corn cake batter and just freeze it, so you don't even have to deal with the entire process when you get back home tired from work. The mayonnaise and lettuce sandwich may seem like an odd combination at first, but it was a simple, satisfying meal for many families during tough times. Before the era of trendy BLTs and elaborate sandwiches, this humble sandwich was a go-to for those looking for something fresh and easy to prepare. Made with crisp iceberg lettuce and creamy mayonnaise, it provided a refreshing crunch and rich flavor, often when other ingredients were too expensive or scarce. Iceberg lettuce was inexpensive and readily available, making it the perfect base for this sandwich. The mayonnaise added a creamy texture, making each bite smooth and comforting. While this sandwich may not have been fancy, it was beloved for its simplicity and the way it brightened up an otherwise basic meal. In times when fresh produce was limited, the lettuce offered a rare dose of green, and the mayo brought a touch of indulgence. It wasn't a sandwich for a gourmet feast, but it was a practical and affordable meal when resources were stretched thin. For many families, the mayonnaise and lettuce sandwich was the only fresh food they could afford. It wasn't about gourmet ingredients or complex flavors. It was about making do with what was available, and it worked. This sandwich served as a reminder of how, sometimes, the simplest meals are the ones that bring comfort. But if you think this sandwich was basic, wait until you see what's next, where the simplicity of the meal gets a little more daring. While egg drop soup might evoke images of your favorite Chinese takeout, Depression-era Americans had their own inventive take on this classic dish. When times got tough and wallets got thinner, families turned to an American-style egg drop soup, cleverly crafted from simple ingredients that were affordable and accessible. Usually, it was nothing more than broth, often just salted water, if we're honest, with a single precious egg carefully beaten and slowly drizzled into the simmering liquid. The egg stretched surprisingly far, forming delicate ribbons that turned plain broth into something more substantial. Food historians note that cooks, driven by creativity born from necessity, occasionally enhanced the soup by sneaking in leftover vegetables or even stale bread crusts, brilliantly reducing waste and maximizing resources. There's even an old joke from the era. Families humorously called it egg drop soup because that's exactly what they did. Drop in one egg, cross their fingers, and hope nobody noticed the absence of meat. Despite its humble composition, the warm broth offered important nutrients and protein, essential during a time when these were scarce. Slapjacks were not thick, they were not fluffy, they were flat, barely holding together, made from flour, water, and sometimes a pinch of salt if you were lucky. The name came from the motion. Slap it on the pan, flip it, slap it again. No eggs, no baking powder, just desperation folded into batter. You could fry it in a pan, over a stone, or even on the lid of a kettle. The outside crisped up while the inside stayed doughy. And if you had sorghum syrup, you were eating good. Sorghum was dark, thick, and sticky sweet, made from crushed cane and cooked down in big open kettles. People bartered for it, grew it, and guarded their bottles like gold. One drizzle could turn a tasteless flap of dough into a meal that felt like dessert. Some even traded favors just to get a spoonful. You learned to stretch sweetness, savor each bite, and clean the plate with your fingers. Slapjacks were not Sunday breakfast. They were wartime food. They were poorhouse food. But they were also the food of childhoods that remembered hard times fondly through the smell of syrup on hot iron. Which meal brings back your memories? Comment below, like if you enjoyed, and subscribe for more.